Hey friends, welcome back. Today we travel to the sun-bleached deserts of ancient Egypt to explore the life and legacy of Saint Anthony the Great, often called the father of monasticism. Anthony is the patron saint of hermits, monks, and desert dwellers, and his spiritual influence can be felt from the monasteries of Ethiopia and Greece to the quiet cloisters of Western Europe. Born in Egypt, he lived over a century through persecution, empire, and spiritual upheaval. But through it all, he chose the silence of the desert over the noise of power. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below which saint you would like us to visit next. Now let us walk into the sand and stone of Egypt, into the stillness, and meet the man whose inner battles shaped a way of life that still inspires seekers today. Anthony was born around the year 251 AD in the village of Koma, nestled along the Nile in Upper Egypt. His family was wealthy and devout, owning land and raising him in the Christian faith during a time when Christians were not yet safe or accepted. But the life of privilege did not define him. From an early age, Anthony was serious, quiet, and drawn to the spiritual life. When he was about 18 years old, tragedy struck. Both his parents died suddenly, leaving him and his younger sister alone. It was during this fragile time that he wandered into a church and heard a passage from the Gospel of Matthew. "If you want to be perfect, go, sell what you own, and give it to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come, follow me." For most people, such a verse might stir reflection. For Anthony, it was a direct command. He immediately sold the family estate, gave away his inheritance, and entrusted his sister to the care of a Christian community of women. Then he walked into the wilderness. At first he did not go far. He found an old hermit nearby and began to learn the ways of ascetic life, prayer, fasting, and simplicity. But the pull of solitude kept growing stronger. So Anthony went deeper into the desert. He lived in abandoned tombs, then further still, into a cave in the mountains near the Nile, where he remained in near total isolation for years. It was there that his journey as a spiritual warrior began, not against external enemies, but against temptation, fear, and spiritual exhaustion. The desert was not just a place, it became a crucible. Every comfort was stripped away, every distraction removed. All that remained was his soul and his God. Anthony's time in the desert was not peaceful, at least not at first. According to his biographer, Saint Athanasius, Anthony faced unspeakable spiritual warfare. He was tormented by terrifying visions, some demonic, some psychological. He heard voices, saw beasts. His body grew thin, his mind was tested, and his heart was often flooded with fear. It is said that at one point, Anthony was physically attacked by invisible forces. When friends brought him back to recover, he insisted on returning to the cave, declaring, "Let them come. Nothing will separate me from the love of Christ." These were not hallucinations in the modern sense. In the ancient world, the desert was understood as a spiritual battlefield, a place where demons dwelled, far from the distractions of civilization. To go into the desert was to enter the realm of spiritual warfare, and Anthony had chosen this willingly. Over time, Anthony grew stronger, not in the body, though he did regain health, but in spirit. He developed an interior silence so strong that even when temptation came, it no longer moved him. The cave had become his sanctuary. He would eat only once a day, sometimes once every 2 days, living on bread, water, and prayer. Eventually, his reputation grew. Travelers, pilgrims, and other seekers came to hear him speak, even if only a few words. Some begged to stay near him. He resisted at first, but slowly came to understand that God was calling him not only to solitude, but to teach others how to follow this way of life. Anthony emerged from his cave with a calm presence and deep wisdom. His gaze was described as piercing, his body healthy despite years of deprivation. He spoke simply, often quoting scripture or offering short, potent guidance. He did not claim authority, but people listened, and they changed. By confronting his own inner demons, Anthony had gained something deeper than peace. He had become a mirror. In his silence, others heard their own longings more clearly, and many left behind their old lives to follow him into the desert, not to copy his life, but to find God in their own. Though he never intended it, Anthony became the spiritual father of an entire movement. The monastic way of life, retreating from society to focus on God, existed before him, but he gave it form, structure, and spiritual clarity. His cave became the heart of a growing community, though loosely organized. Disciples lived in simple huts scattered across the desert, coming together only for worship and guidance. Anthony himself refused to be called leader. He simply lived as an example, and others followed. Anthony taught that a monk should live a life of discipline, manual labor, prayer, solitude, and charity. When asked how to defeat temptation, he often said, "Do not fear temptation. The more you resist, the stronger you become." His influence reached beyond Egypt. Letters from him were carried to distant lands. Visitors from Rome and Constantinople came to see him. Even the Emperor Constantine, ruler of the Roman world, wrote him a letter. Anthony replied, kindly but plainly, "Do not be proud because you are an emperor. Be humble, for you are only a man." Despite his fame, Anthony never sought luxury or recognition. He turned down political involvement and resisted being turned into a figurehead. Instead, he urged Christians to cling to faith, to reject pride, and to live simply, even in times of growing comfort and compromise. When persecution of Christians rose again under Emperor Maximinus, Anthony briefly left his desert to visit imprisoned believers in Alexandria. He stood with them, not to preach, but to offer silent encouragement. Then he returned to the desert, his preferred sanctuary. He lived to be over 100 years old, passing away in the year 356 AD. His body was buried in a secret grave, as he had requested, to avoid being turned into a shrine. But his memory could not be hidden. Today, Coptic, Eastern Orthodox, and Roman Catholic Christians all honor Saint Anthony. His life birthed the monastic orders that would later spread through Syria, Palestine, Europe, and beyond. His story was written down by Saint Athanasius and became a spiritual classic read for generations. Anthony did not build an empire. He built a path, a narrow one, carved in silence, lined with prayer, and many still walk it today. Throughout his life, Anthony was surrounded by accounts of miracles. He did not seek them, but they seemed to follow him. Healings, deliverance from demons, visions of angels, and supernatural discernment. Those who visited him often left changed, not because of spectacle, but because of the power of stillness. One story tells of a man who came to Anthony paralyzed in body and spirit. Anthony said nothing at first. He simply prayed, placed his hand gently on the man's shoulder, and waited. By morning, the man could walk. Another visitor, a young man plagued by confusion, asked Anthony how to find God. Anthony led him to a quiet spot, sat beside him for an hour without speaking, and then finally whispered, "You have already found him." He was waiting in the silence. These were not tricks or signs for the curious. They were moments of deep spiritual alignment. Anthony's miracle was his clarity, the way he revealed God not through speech, but through presence. And that presence still speaks. In a world constantly rushing, Anthony reminds us to slow down. In a culture addicted to noise, he invites us to hear again. He challenges us not to escape life, but to root ourselves more deeply in what truly matters. You do not need a desert to follow his path. You need courage, honesty, a willingness to face yourself, and perhaps a bit more silence. Saint Anthony's life calls to something ancient and urgent. It says, "You are not your possessions. You are not your performance. You are not your distractions. You are a soul capable of quiet, clarity, and communion with God." Thank you for watching. If Saint Anthony's story spoke to you, leave a candle emoji in the comments to light the way for others. Like the video, subscribe for more powerful journeys into the lives of the saints, and tell us who you want to meet next. Until next time, walk quietly and walk with purpose.